All right, so I'm going to start blogging this about what I'm going through with the Navy so that people can kind of just understand what's happening. So if you don't know, the Navy has come back and given me another blow when it comes to accepting the fact that I have PTSD and severe migraines. And so what has happened basically is I went to the Navy and I told them that I was struggling and I was having some issues a couple years ago in 2014. And this was like way after, a couple years after they had tried to kick me out for issues that I was dealing with. So I started struggling, I started needing help, and I didn't want to be a statistic and I didn't want to commit suicide. I had a lot of things going for me. So I reached out and I asked for help from my command, and the command said absolutely. So they started a line of duty where they basically initiated the fact of whether or not I suffered from my disabilities while I was serving in combat. And they came back and they approved it. And they said that I did, and that I was eligible to go to care at Walter Reed. So went to Walter Reed a couple years, started getting treatment, realized that the medications that I had been on had just been kind of hurting me all along, and that I needed a little bit more intense treatment. So Walter Reed's an amazing place for wounded warriors, and they sent me to the pain management clinic in the NICO. And they were able to get me in to get some treatments called stellate ganglion block and ketamine infusions, because at that point they determined that I had what they called treatment-resistant depression, and medications just weren't going to work. So they started me on these medications, started me on this process, and the medical evaluation board comes back and they said this service member was injured in line of duty with his disabilities, and he has received the most amount of relief he can get from the military at this time. If we put him on temporary retirement list, he likely will not get better within the 5-year time frame for that, and further military service will only intensify his disabilities, and therefore they recommended that I be separated from the Navy at that point. So once that happens, they send it up to the physical evaluation board, and the physical evaluation board analyzes everything that's happened in my medical record to date. And they basically came back and they said, service member's not on medication, he's able to work through his disabilities, and therefore he should be retained to the United States Navy with full active status or whatever. Nothing wrong with me. So I dispute that, because the fact is that they said I wasn't on medications, but they didn't look at the fact that I was on medications. I just wasn't on like a daily pill. I was getting injections in my neck, and I was getting infusions through my bloodstream once a month, and those are long-lasting medications. And so ketamine and the lidocaine that they use for those two procedures are very much on the mental health formulary. And so therefore I disputed it, and I said no, I think you need to review this because I'm under these cares. So I was able to get looked at again for the formal board. And so the formal board gave me an opportunity to basically be reviewed again. And they said, oh yeah, absolutely, you've done this. But at that point, they started to they started to question people that I brought to the board for the review. So the board started questioning my wife. They asked my wife why she wasn't aware of the fact that I didn't sleep at night. They wanted to know why she wasn't aware of the fact that I struggle with anxiety and stuff. And what it come down to is anyone who has PTSD wants to protect their loved ones, right? We have an obligation to serve our country, and we're taught to protect those that we love. And so I was protecting my wife and my family from understanding what I was going through. It wasn't until a couple of years ago that I believe my father and my uncle even were aware of the pain that I was going through on a daily basis. So my wife, she knew I was struggling. She knows that I have a short temper and things like that, but she just didn't realize the extent of what was happening with it. So so the board comes back and they said, while you are on medication, your wife isn't aware that you don't sleep at night. People like you. Your wife says that you like to go camping and bowling, and therefore there's nothing wrong with you. We're finding you fit for full duty. And they also said that because I was able to maintain an employment where I advocate for veterans, it's the same as being in the Navy, and therefore I can go do something in the Navy. But they weren't willing to give me a job in the Navy that I could do. So the option came down to the fact of what's next. And so the Navy said, hey, you need to come in for a PRT waiver. And I did, and I was going to fail because I'm overweight. I'm not ashamed of that. I've been struggling with mental illnesses for the past 9 years. And so, yes, definitely overweight. And so they were gonna administratively separate me from the Navy because the Navy said that there was nothing wrong with me. So I was put in the individual ready reserves at that point, and what that meant was I was no longer able to retire from the Navy because I had been on med hold for so long. I didn't have any good years. I can't make those years up because I'm only allowed to serve to a certain point as an E5 in the Navy. I can't retire. I can't advance in the individual ready reserves. I'm basically like done. Like my Navy career ended the day I went in the IRR because I'm overweight. I can't come back on orders. I can't advance in the IRR, and I can't earn enough points to allow me to retire. And my contract doesn't end until 2022, and they're not going to extend me 5 years beyond that to allow me to make up the years that I was on med hold. So that takes me to the PEB part. So I appeal that, and I send it to the petition for relief for the president of the board of the physical evaluation board, and they come back and they tell me that they stand their ground, that the Navy gave me all my due rights afforded to me, and they basically just say that I provided no new evidence that I was injured. So I was going to drop it. I was going to leave it alone. And I decided that I was going to file a BCNR, Board of Naval Corrected Records, because I felt like there was enough evidence there that supported my decision. I had spoke to several people about it. They told me that the BCNR was reviewing cases of mental illnesses a lot differently. And if I could just provide anything that showed that I did suffer from these issues as a result of my deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, then I would likely be medically retired. So I did, and during the process, the VA did an evaluation of me. They determined that my mental health got worse, and they issued me a 100% disability rating. So I basically submitted all that paperwork to the Navy, and then the Navy doubled down again on the BCNR, and that's the letter I received on Friday. And not only did they punch me in the gut by acknowledging all of the accusation I made against them, in the previous round, they actually accused me of lying about my service and guarding terrorists and being assaulted and being mentally, basically being in a bad situation, right? They said no. And so I didn't reach out to like my shipmates and ask them for buddy statements. Instead, I reached out to my base colonel, and I reached out to my commanding officer and my XO, and I asked them for letters, and they provided them to me, and they disputed the facts of the Navy in that. And so what did the Navy do in the BCNR is they basically came back and they said that I enjoy friendships with senior military officials and expert knowledge in matters, but they still couldn't find any evidence that I had anything wrong with me. So therefore, they basically just said, yeah, I pissed them off because I went to professionals to defend me against them, And I think that's what you're supposed to do. I don't think I'm wrong in that. So I went to the doctors that they sent me to dispute their facts that they said weren't wrong with me. And I also went to my commanding officers that they assigned me to dispute the facts that they say I wasn't really in combat, to actually say that I was in combat. And anyone who was in Camp Bucca, or anyone that was in Afghanistan, anyone that was in Camp Bucca, we remember the day that ISIS was formed, right? We were there. I remember whenever they brought that out. So that's kind of where I'm at. So what's happening now is I started a webpage. Well, it's actually my webpage, but I'll publish it soon. There's a reporter that wants to do an article on this, so I'm probably going to be doing an article on this soon. And then I'm going to basically, I'm going to fight this in the media, and I'm going to try to get a lawyer. It's going to cost a lot of money to get a lawyer, about $20,000. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that, but that's basically my update. I wanted to keep it brief. I wanted to keep you up to date, and I'll make you aware of changes as they happen. So I appreciate everyone's support. I love everyone. I really appreciate all that you're doing for me, and I'll talk to you all soon.